Mr. Mulcair.
Je veux revenir à Monsieur Raymond.
I want to continue my conversation with Mr. Raymond because when he nods, yes, it's not something that can be recorded in the minutes. So, in fact, when it's indicated that he lost 13.7% in the first 3 quarters, we want to make sure that it's properly recorded. So, the most recent fiscal year has been over for since 1 month. So, on what were those? When will the complete report be published?
Which were for the first 3 quarters of the year, and correctly, there was a decline of $13.8 billion, which translates into a negative 13.7%. If you want to compare 2008 calendar year, there was a decline of $18.3 billion, just because some people think in calendar years, with a decline of 14.4%. Our year end, as you point out, is March 31st. Our annual report is expected to be out at the end of May, and that's...
I understand this, and we went through this with the CPP Investments last week, but they were able to give us an estimation. You know what your number is. Even though you might have your annual report coming out in a couple of weeks, you're before Parliament now. And by the way, I must say, I appreciate the fact that you're here today. I'm a little bit disappointed that David Dennison declined. I mean, he decides who gets to present here. So it's a pleasure for us to meet with you, Mrs. Wambold, with you, Mr. Raymond. But I think that at a time like this, the chairman should have had the guts to come before Parliament. You know, it would have shown at least a bit of courage and conviction and respect. But that being said, you know what the number is, and I'm asking you to give it to us now. What's the number for fiscal 08-09?
I think to respect our stewards...
I'd like you to respect Parliament and the Canadians who elected us here. What is the closest estimation of your number? You're not the auditor, that's fine. But what's the number?
We have a very transparent disclosure process.
Yeah, you've been through all that. I'm asking you for the number.
Results. I'm afraid until it's been signed off, 1, by our auditors and 2, by our board of directors and tabled before our stewards.
I find that a singular lack of respect bordering on contempt for this process.
Wow.
I'd like to go, Mr. Chairman, now to the question of the benchmarks that we were discussing before. Now, we have before us Mr. Raymond, who's in charge of public markets. There's also a Mark Wiseman, who's the Senior Vice President, Private Markets. The private market benchmarks, Mr. Wiseman's not here, but they don't reflect liquidity risk, leverage, and the beta, in other words, the market returns A, of the underlying investments, allowing them to easily beat them, allowing you to beat them, so you can justify your bonuses. I've looked through the annual report. Despite what Mrs. Warmbold said before, there is no indication in there as to what those benchmarks were. And indeed, in your presentation, you say word for word that your performance bonuses, that you obviously have every intention of paying yourselves again this year, are based on 2 factors: how the fund performs overall and whether you generate returns above a market-based benchmark. But you don't give them for the private markets. We just don't have them. So I'd like to make the following suggestion. Now that you've heard what's happening in the real world with people who have worked in sawmills all their lives losing their pensions, now that you know that your salary, your base salary, is already the highest of anybody anyway, with the millions of dollars that you paid yourself last time, I'm going to make a strong suggestion to you that you refrain from paying yourselves. I understand the subtlety, it's not you, it's the board, but let's not kid ourselves. Let's be honest and say that at this time of grave economic crisis, the last thing you should allow yourselves to do is to be paid bonuses. And if you really need to be convinced of that, at least make a proposal that any bonuses that are based on this 4-year examination be put in abeyance. Find a technique, find a mechanism to put them in abeyance, at least till we can measure those 4 years. Because coming as it does at the end of a year when you've lost at least $15 to $20 billion in the CPP fund, I think that very few Canadians would put up with seeing people who are already paid as much as you are as your base salary paying themselves a bonus. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. J'aimerais le dire en français pour que les gens qui l'ont...
I'll say this again in French for those who did not understand. We believe that in current economic conditions, given this very serious economic crisis, it would be unjustifiable, scandalous, that people would pay themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars in base salary and then pay themselves bonuses of millions of dollars each year, as has been practiced to date. So put that money aside so we can truly measure if your performance is as good as you claim it is, And secondly, try and be more transparent with your performance benchmarks and indicators. Thank you.